from the second class of strategic planning. Today, we're going to talk about the differences between non and for-profit as it impacts strategic planning. Where I left off at the end of tape number 1 was my saying, in strategic planning, according to Allison and Kay, there are 4 main approaches to strategic planning: administrative capacity building, program, resource development, and governance. And I left you with this triangle and said, what could this be? So let me tell you what this could be. In a for-profit sector, we have a similar set of strategic issues. The first one is corporate or organization-wide. The second is business-wide or industry-wide. And this is where the competitive component is in the industry. And the third is function. And in this function piece, we think of things like human resource or production or marketing or finance. These are the areas of administrative capacity that we talk about in the nonprofit sector. So let me talk very quickly about the 4 main topics that were covered in the chapter you were supposed to read called Play to Win. And I think there are important distinctions between nonprofit and for-profit that we are going to be working with through the term. The first is market failure. The second is the role of the government with nonprofits. The third is the role and importance of third-party payers in the nonprofit system. And the fourth is mission or mission creep, as he describes it. All right, very quickly, this was in your reading. Market failure. Nonprofits exist because there are services that are needed to be provided for which there is no profit to be made. And so a business doesn't want to offer these services because they can't make any money at them. The service is needed, everybody knows it's needed, but there isn't any money to be made by offering it. So this is essentially a market failure, and this is what a nonprofit steps in to do. All right, it's a necessary activity. Customers can't pay what the service is worth. If you bring in a symphony or an art museum is running, a customer can't pay what the value of that might be, so another market failure. An activity doesn't have identifiable individuals, an environmental advocacy program or a political action committee. You can't distinguish if I pay X, person Y will receive the product. So this is another form of market failure. Okay, role of government. Many times the role of government has as a legal responsibility or a mandate to provide a service, but they're not set up to do it. So a nonprofit steps in and does that. From the nonprofit's perspective, this is great because it's a funding source. From the government's perspective, they don't have to be messing around with something that they're really not prepared to do well. Third-party payers. These are our funding agencies, and they're really important in the nonprofit sector because they don't receive a direct benefit for something that they're paying for. So the benefit they purchase, really, the donation they make, means that a service or a benefit goes to someone else. This is really important to keep in mind with a nonprofit because philanthropy is voluntary. And so a nonprofit has to make a case for them being the one that should get this third-party payer's donation. This is not something that a business has to deal with. Okay, and the last thing I want to make sure we mention here is mission creep. We know that mission is really important to a nonprofit. We talk about it all the time. What happens in mission creep is because of the funding source or the fundraising capabilities, the mission of an institution creeps or shifts towards something else because it can get more money or funding by doing that. So these are the 4 important aspects that I want you to keep in mind as we move forward in our discussions about strategic planning and what makes the nonprofit scenario very different in strategic planning than the for-profit scenario. And we'll talk more about this as we talk about industry competition when we meet next Monday. Thanks so much, folks, for putting up with these little flip charts and this approach. We'll have one more set of information for you to digest, and it'll be a stakeholder activity that you'll be able to do and bring to class with you on Monday. Have a great weekend. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.